a pernicious addiction, or utter disillusionment with life for the fertile soil from which the psychological rebirth is manifested. The securest way to the rapturous sort of happiness of which the twice-born make report has, as an historic matter of fact, been through a more radical pessimism than anything that we have yet considered. Many, however, are those who descend into a living hell, but relatively few are those who experience the transformation of self that leads to a reaffirmation of life. What differentiates those who remain locked in their misery from those who break free of it? By turning to myth, that most ancient source of the psychology of man, further clues about this process can be discerned, for the rebirth is one of the most common themes of mythology. Countless are the stories in which a hero or heroine is presented with great challenges only to overcome them and in the process to experience a radical transformation in their character. What many of these stories share in common is the element of the sacrifice. The rebirth is only granted to the man or woman who first appeases the gods. But we do not need a god to understand the necessity of the sacrifice, as there is a psychological explanation for why a sacrifice can engender a radical personality change. Sacrifice, writes Carl Jung, always means the renunciation of a valuable part of oneself, and through it, the sacrificer escapes being devoured. The sacrifice is the difficult but necessary step of abandoning an aspect of ourself in order to pave the way for the emergence of the new. The sacrifice is critical in the process of rebirth for the simple reason that often what keeps us locked in our problems is the inability to recognize that ways of life that served us in our past may morph from promoters of our well-being to the acute cause of our suffering. A sacrifice can take countless forms and may be as simple as the ending of a relationship, the quitting of a dead-end job, or the breaking of an addictive habit. The sacrifice is never easy if it is to be the type of sacrifice that can engender a psychological rebirth. But as Nietzsche put it, the snake which cannot shed its skin perishes, and so too the man or woman who never risks a break with the past is destined to perish in the stagnation of their worn-out ways of being. The dying of one attitude or need, wrote Rollo may be the other side of the birth of something new, which is a law of growth in nature, not at all limited to human beings. One can choose to kill a neurotic strategy, a dependency, a clinging, and then find that he can choose to live as a freer self. A dying of part of oneself is often followed by a heightened awareness of self, a heightened sense of possibility. Sometimes the mere act of sacrifice will be enough to cure what ails us. Free from the chains of our past, we can look at the world with a new set of eyes and move forward with a new sense of purpose and energy. A painful sacrifice can be risked with a mighty effort of the will, wrote Jung. If successful, the sacrifice bears blessed fruit, and the sacrificer leaps at one bound into the state of being practically cured. Not everyone, however, will find that the sacrifice alone leads to its own cure. In most cases, the sacrifice will initially have the opposite effect. Instead of curing what ails us and giving birth to a new and better life order, the sacrifice will lead to disorder. For in sacrificing an old way of being, we are likely to discover that we have nothing to fill the void. The sacrifice will have cast us down into the proverbial realm of chaos, and here danger lurks. For on the one hand, in complex systems, such as the life of man, chaos begets new forms of order, or as Mahoney puts it, systemic disorganization appears to be an important antecedent to reorganization. But on the other hand, there is always a risk that the chaos will overwhelm us, and rather than leading to a new and better life order, the descent into chaos will lead to a psychological breakdown. Some psychologists suggest that the psychological rebirth only differs from a psychological breakdown by the end result. The stages that lead to a breakdown, in other words, often mirror those that produce the rebirth. Or as Jung explains, the loss of balance that the sacrifice can produce is similar in principle to a psychotic disturbance. That is, it differs from the initial stage of mental illness only by the fact that it leads in the end to greater health, while the latter leads to yet greater destruction. To diminish the risks of a breakdown, an active approach is crucial. Like the heroes of myth, we must view ourselves as explorers of the chaos, not passive observers who are merely pushed and pulled by forces beyond our control. Our goal at this stage is to experiment with novel ways of ordering our life in the attempt to fill the void left by the sacrifice. But while novel forms of order are crucial for the ascent from the realm of chaos, experiments with novelty are stressful and often accompanied by intense states of fear and anxiety.
Yeah, I've thrown
If
a lot
we
of
can
shit not
recognize,
getting this to
however,
work
that
before.
this is a natural part of the
A lot of holes in
process
the wall.
and not reflective
Not
of
just from
anything
that.
inherently wrong with us, we may find it easier to push forward despite the turmoil
Boom.
that surrounds us. Or as
So you just
Mahoney
got to talk about
explains,
your problems.
episodes of intense emotional
you could probably
distress
even do
and
it
disorder
fucking
often
twice.
reflect natural, and yes, even healthy, expressions of an individual's struggles toward reorganization. Such struggles are not always successful, of course, but they may be viewed with substantially less fear and impatience if they are construed as the activities of an open, developing system in search of a more extensive balance with its world. One set of skills that can make the difference between whether we emerge from the realm of chaos as a twice born, or whether the chaos forces us back to our old, or perhaps worse ways of being, are rebalancing and relaxation skills. Practices like meditation, physical activity, breathing exercises, and other techniques of this nature can be crucial in our attempts to navigate the chaos into which we have fallen. When new experiences destabilize one's system, writes Mahoney, it is valuable to have skills in restabilizing and returning to a sense of safety and security. The more often one practices and refines such exercises, the more competent one feels in risking excursions toward the edges of unfamiliar experiencing. In the end, however, a voluntary descent into the realm of chaos is risky, even if we arm ourselves with tools that can make navigation of this realm easier. So knowing that a radical personality change is possible, and that a sacrifice may engender a psychological rebirth, do we make the leap, or do we instead stick to the less risky approach of the gradualist method of change? This is a question each of us must face for ourselves. But if we are already trapped in our own personal hell, the question that may be more appropriate is whether not making the sacrifice is perhaps the greater risk. For the realm of chaos is not only entered by means of voluntary sacrifice. More typical is an involuntary descent into these depths. If we persist in our dysfunctional ways, if we remain, in the words of Jung, an immovable pillar of the past, then eventually the fragile order of our life may give way to chaos whether we like it or not. A sacrifice of our old ways will be forced upon us, but an involuntary sacrifice is, according to Jung, an unmitigated catastrophe. It is more likely to result in a psychological breakdown than a psychological rebirth. Therefore, if we feel our life is moving in this direction, if chaos and disorder are already creeping in, we may want to take control of the process and make the voluntary sacrifice that may save us from a more dire outcome. No one should deny the danger of the descent, wrote Jung, but it can be risked. No one need to risk it, but it is certain that someone will. And let those who go down the sunset way do so with open eyes, for it is a sacrifice which daunts even the gods. Yet every descent is followed by an ascent. The vanishing shapes are shaped anew, and a truth is valid in the end only if it suffers change and bears new witness in new images, in new tongues, like a new wine that is put into new bottles.
I am going to play something on my iPad, if I can find it. Whee! Where are you, Mr. iPad? Have you gone swimming or something? Mr. iPad! Have you no iPad? Or do you have no iPad? Oh, here. Forgot about my sacrifice. Oh my goodness, I have a gray shoes. I wonder what kind of gray shoes I have. Learn something new every day, don't I? This is from my Santa Muerta bracelet. This is from my magical grimoire prime numbers without zeros for Sudoku. I am a weird kid, aren't I? What do I need to keep out of here? Damn, not all of it. Damn it. Let's not overthink it though. Just basically don't want it to be rancid upstairs. I guess I did, yeah. Better, yeah, probably smart. My ears are on fire. Alright. Let's fucking do this. Oh my god, where'd the Santa Muerto go? Oh, there you go. Of course, hiding in the shadow. Yeah, I figured the knots from a Santa Muerta fucking bracelet are really, really important. Like, I was like, I was not about to throw this shit away. This is definitely the sort of thing you burn. I still have the little guys, little devils. Oh, this is gonna look so cool. There's like little glow in the dark, at least a couple little glow in the dark stickers in there. That's fun. Yeah, let's toss one more in there. I think this. Wait, no. No. Oh yeah.